And we welcome you into the Monday, May the 16th edition of the Bottom Line Lexington podcast. We're entering that slow time of year in local sports. Big news today from the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns, of course, who played at Kentucky last year, Rookie of the Year, unanimously or anonymously, depending on who you ask. The first Kentucky alum to earn Rookie of the Year in the NBA. Makes me wonder, why didn't he do better last year? I look at his numbers as a Kentucky player last year, 10.3 points a game, 56% field goals. I understand they had a lot of good players last year. I know they didn't play a whole lot because of that platoon system, but you'd think the Rookie of the Year in the NBA would have given you more than 10 points a game in college. Whereas this year he got 18.3 points a game and shot 54%. If you look at the numbers in terms of player efficiency, the 5 best rookies this year were Towns, Jahlil Okafor, and 3 European players from last year, including Kristaps Porzingis of the Knicks. Makes you wonder what's really going on in college basketball these days. Just look at Minnesota, though. They've got Andrew Wiggins 2 years ago. They got Towns this year. What if they hit the lottery? What if they hit the number 1 pick this year and get Ben Simmons or a difference maker? That's going to be the best team in the league for 8 to 10 years. Some way, somehow, Minnesota would screw that up. Everybody here remembers that Kentucky-Wisconsin game in the Final Four that Kentucky lost to go to 38-1. I looked up the play-by-play of that game. The last shot Karl-Anthony Towns took was with 6 minutes and 37 seconds to go. Just saying. It just shows how badly the Harrison twins hijacked and lost that game, along with Cal trying to milk the shot clock for everything it was worth with a 4-point lead, and lost that game. Those were the 3 culprits in that game. The Harrison twins and Cal lost that game for Kentucky. That's it. Go back and watch the last 5 minutes of that game. And I've said this many times. If you're Goliath, you go at them. There's no need to act like David if you're Goliath. You have the better team. You have the lead. Why not attack? What do you gain by milking a few extra seconds off the clock? But I digress. We can't live in the past. But congratulations, Karl-Anthony Towns on Rookie of the Year. And Devin Booker finished 4th. Another week means another State of the Union address from Coach Cal on his website, who says he wants this to be his last stop. He wants to catch UCLA in national championships. He wants the kids sitting lower in Rupp Arena. Well, good luck with that. You're never going to move those old blue hairs from the first 5 rows. Lather, rinse, repeat. Another pep talk from Coach Cal. If he wants to catch UCLA, he's got to win 3 more national championships. If you want to win national championships, you have to follow up on your potential. Each of the last 4 years, Kentucky was ranked top 3 in the preseason. They didn't win. In every season that Kentucky has lost in the NCAA tournament under Cal, that's 5 years, each time they lost, Kentucky was favored to win in Las Vegas. So it's not about gathering talent. Kentucky's always got top-level, top-shelf talent. The trick is finishing at the end, which Cal seems to have a very difficult time doing, although he's had the better team every single time he's lost in the tournament. More basketball news. Marcus Lee was apparently the worst player at the NBA Combine last week. Now, it's not just the scouts that are saying that. It's the numbers. Going by the stats taken from these pickup games, Lee had a negative 3.3 player efficiency rating, which was the worst of any player at the Combine, including one game where he played 20 minutes, had 0 points, and 1 rebound. And that kid wants to get drafted? Look, I don't put any stock whatsoever in these pickup games at NBA Draft Combine because they're just what they are, pickup games. I watched a little bit of one the other day. Didn't look like there's a whole lot of defense being played. I'll just say it like that. CBS now has Marcus Lee ranked 111th on their big board. 111. Only 60 players get drafted, by the way. So in other words, 51 players would have to fall off the face of the earth somehow before Marcus Lee got drafted. Marcus Lee, let me just tell you something. You've got 2 options, my friend. Come back to Kentucky or hope you get picked up in the D-League. But what options does this kid have? If he comes back to Kentucky, what's there to gain for him? The best scenario that he could ever ask for is if he could be one of those senior transfers, but he hasn't graduated. So he can't transfer and not have to sit out a year. If he transferred to another school where he would get 35 minutes a game, he'd have to sit out another year. Then by the time he graduated, he'd be 23 years old, which is ancient in the NBA draft. These kids are 19 getting drafted. Marcus Lee has backed himself into a corner. And we use this stat a lot, but it just bears repeating. In his last 23 games this year, he got double-digit points twice. He fouled out 6 times. He is what he is, and he's not an NBA player. That's the bottom line. Mark Story came out with an article in the Herald Leader about UK football being in a pivotal season. Mark Story, you're the winner of today's Captain Obvious Award. Thank you so much for pointing this out for us, because we wouldn't have known that this was a pivotal year for UK football if you didn't point it out. Thank you so much. ESPN's going through every college football team's quote-unquote toughest stretch of their schedules this year. Kentucky's is a 4-week shot between late October and mid-November, where they play Mississippi State at home, at Missouri, Georgia, and then at Tennessee. Mark Story also reminds us that if they want to fire Stoops after this year, they owe him $12 million. I don't know. This team goes 4-8. They might do it anyway. So let's look at that 4-game stretch. You get home against Mississippi State. Mississippi State has no more Dak Prescott, but they still have Dan Mullen. At Missouri, that game could go any which way possible. You've got a new coach. You'll have a new quarterback with a new system. Anything can happen in that game, but Kentucky has proven that on the road, they simply can't win games in the SEC. Georgia at home, there's a loss. At Tennessee, there's an even bigger loss. So the toughest stretch, according to ESPN, Mississippi State, who you haven't beaten in 7 tries in the last 7 games. At Missouri, who you haven't beaten at all since they joined the conference. Home to Georgia, and at Tennessee. I'll say it right now. If you're a Kentucky fan and you win one of those 4 games, you should be happy, because that comes after the magical October 15th date for UK football. Mark Stoops, before October 15th, the last 2 years, 9 wins, 3 losses. Hey. There you go. We got something here. After October 15th, in both years, 1 win, 11 losses. That's how you end 5-7. That's how you don't make bowl games. And that is why the fan base is so negative, which they should be. By the way, that 1 win after October 15th, the last 2 years, it was against Charlotte. Quite possibly the worst team in Division I last year. There are also some early season football betting lines that came out in Las Vegas last week, which was basically Christmas morning for me. The one UK game that was listed, their game at Louisville at the end of the season, in which Louisville is now favored by 16.5 points. We said on this show a few weeks ago, Louisville would win that game by double digits. It looks like Las Vegas agrees with the bottom line. But why wouldn't they? Louisville has 18 starters returning and a quarterback who at the end of the last year was playing as well as any quarterback in the country. Proven coach, young, returning, starting quarterback? Whether you like Louisville or whether you don't, and I'm ambivalent, I could care less, this is a 10-win team this year. I'll promise you right now. I still go back to thinking, what would have happened if Eastern had held on against Kentucky? Because Eastern had a 2-touchdown lead with 5 minutes to go and literally gave that game away. Not to mention, Kentucky's last touchdown came on a 4th and goal where if that pass fell incomplete, that game was over. If that pass did fall incomplete that tied the game against Eastern, where would this Kentucky program be today? That team would have finished 4-8 with a loss to Eastern? Can you really bring Mark Stoops back with that? I understand they're putting a lot of value into all these great recruiting classes he's been picking up. When I say great, I mean 13th best in the SEC. But if Mark Story says this is the pivotal year for UK football, I'm sorry. It was last year. You had 8 home games and a returning quarterback last year. This year you've only got 7 home games and your quarterback situation is up in the air. Last year was the year you needed to win 6 games. And now that the big boys of the SEC East, like Florida, like Tennessee, like Georgia, seem to be on the way up instead of on the way down, it can't get any easier. So thank you, Mark Story, for winning today's Captain Obvious Award, for telling us that this year is pivotal for Kentucky football and their coach Mark Stoops. I just would have loved to have seen Kentucky play Western last year. Western Kentucky went down to Vandy and won. UK went down to Vandy and lost. Reds win 9-4 in Philadelphia to prevent the Phillies from a 3-game sweep. Eugenio Suarez, who's been cold as ice for about a month now, finally snaps out of it. 3 hits, including a 3-run homer that basically won the game. Dan Straley, the Reds' best starting pitcher on the season. That usually changes from week to week, unless you count Robert Stevenson, who every time he has a nice quality start, they send him back to Louisville. Your guess is as good as mine on that. Straley gets a win. Tony Cingrani, his 3rd save on the year. The team now has 4 saves on the year. Can we really chalk this up as Cingrani's the closer? for you fantasy fans out there, I don't know. Just something tells me down the line they're going to give Blake Wood. Blake Wood has pitched very well this year. Probably the best out of the bullpen, including CIN-CLE. And for some reason, Brian Price throws Ohlendorf out there in the ninth inning sometimes. I don't get that, because he's been awful. But still, I can't anoint CIN-CLE the closer full time. Not even close at this point. I loved how Joey Votto yesterday went 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. And he also deked the fans right behind first base, acting like he was going to throw a foul ball into the stands. And they're all like, oh, throw it to me. And then he just throws it back to the pitcher. I loved that. Because if I was a Major League Baseball player, if I was on the road, I would taunt fans. I would act like I would give them a baseball and not. I would totally just humiliate them. Now, if you're at home, of course you throw it in the stands. But on the road, and especially in Philadelphia, where I'm sure that they were giving Votto a hard time down there at first base, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But he got killed for it in social media. He's on the road. Those people are bad-mouthing him every second. Then he gets a foul ball, and all of a sudden, I'm your best friend. Throw me the ball. Kind sir. Whatever. Do your thing, Joey Votto. And I don't care if you did go 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts yesterday. You're still leading the team in on-base percentage, even though you have the worst batting average among the regulars right now. The batting average situation will change, because he's an on-base percentage machine. I don't care if it is 6 weeks in. When Johnny Cueto was traded last year, did anybody think Adam Duvall would evolve into the player that he's been so far this year? Duvall went 3 for 4 yesterday. He's hitting .286 on the year with 6 home runs, only 14 RBIs, nobody on base in front of him. But of course, he's been batting like 7th in the lineup. He's had guys like Devin Mesoraco batting in front of him most of the year. He's number 1 on the team in OPS, number 1 on the team on wins above replacement. Those are very key stats that general managers look at. Will this keep up? Of course it won't keep up. He doesn't have enough experience, and they'll figure him out eventually once, whoa, who is this guy? Here's your Reds down on the farm update. I always hated that. You'd always see on television when you'd be watching the Reds and they go, down on the farm, and they'd give you like these minor league updates like you cared about any of these guys. But there is one name playing at Louisville right now in AAA that's caught my eye. Our old friend Jumbo Diaz at Louisville has dominated. 10 innings pitched, 15 strikeouts, only 2 walks, an ERA of 0.00, and 4 saves. He's been amazing at Louisville. Where was this when he was with the Reds? There's an old term that used to be called, he's a quad A player, in which he dominates the minor leagues at AAA, but every time he got called up to the big leagues, he would stink up the joint. So he would be a quad A player. Jumbo Diaz might just be a quad A player. I wouldn't be shocked to see him called up in the very near future and eventually given a shot to close. That's how pathetic this bullpen is. But then again, nothing the Reds do these days, especially in terms of promoting and demoting pitchers to and from the minor leagues, surprises me these days. But Jumbo Diaz on fire at Louisville. Reds now 15-22, 12.5 games behind the Cubs. Boy, that makes for a great summer. Hey, but they're only 6 games out of the wild card. Reds travel to Cleveland tonight. Cleveland a -155. You're going to get about $1.50 for every buck you put on Cincinnati if they win. John Lamb for the Reds, coming back from an injury, 1.80 in very limited innings, versus Cody Anderson, who has got lit up for the Indians, 7.31. Road record for Cincinnati this year, 3-12. Doesn't exactly paint a great picture, although one of those 3 wins was yesterday. Billy Hamilton should be back for the Reds tonight. Cleveland just had a horrible weekend in which they lost to the worst team in the American League, the Minnesota Twins. They lost 2 of 3 at home to the Twins. Interesting thing I saw, tonight's game and tomorrow night's game starts at 6:10 at night. Kind of early, like an hour before any other game in baseball. Don't know if I'll like that. I'll figure it out tonight. But at least if you're old and tired like me, you don't have to stay up till almost midnight just to see the end of the game. If you pick the team tonight, you've got to take the Reds plus 150. That's just a given. I don't think the Reds have a great chance to win this game. We have 2 underdog Mac Daddy Stogie picks later in the show to continue our winning streak from last week when we gave you Johnny Cueto last Thursday night at Arizona, a Mac Daddy Stogie winner. It was funny to see Jose Bautista got what he had coming to him yesterday in Texas as Rougned Odor, or Odor, as my dad called him last night when he saw the back of his uniform, and did the obligatory, Odor? Well, he must stink. Great joke, Dad. Literally cold-cocked Jose Bautista right in the jaw. My thing is, if you do something like this in real life, like road rage, and you get out of the car and you do that, you're going to jail. This guy's not going to have anything. He should get probably between 15 and 25 games. That won't happen. But it all stems from that mythical bat flip during the playoffs last year during Jose Batista's big run. As Major League Baseball knows, and Brian McCann is the captain of this, you can't celebrate in baseball, sorry, or else you're going to get a baseball to the head, like Odor tried to do. He tried to hit Batista right in the head with the baseball. Go back and look at it. I don't know how long he'll be suspended, but it should be longer. More baseball. Gerritt Cole of the Pirates was quoted yesterday saying the Cubs aren't even the best team in baseball, I don't think. This was after the last couple of weeks. The Pirates have lost 5 of 6 to the Cubs, and Jake Arrieta had just beaned one of his teammates that started a little hoo-ha-ha, but certainly not on the level of Jose Batista and the Rangers yesterday. Make a note of this. Pirates and Cubs play again June 17th. I made a note in my calendar because I'll be on the Cubs. You don't say something like that. Even if you are a team's ace like Gerritt Cole is for the Pirates, you don't say that. The Cubs will remember. They'll win that first game on June 17th. We've talked about the awful Reds bullpen all this year. Aroldis Chapman, already a fan favorite for the Yankees. 3 games, 2 saves, and only in 1 week of action, he has thrown the 9 fastest pitches in Major League Baseball this year. Ever since he's come back, the Yankees have only lost 1 game. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Speaking of New York pitchers, I saw something today. Dwight Gooden, I don't know, people my age will remember him. He's only 51 years old, and he was quoted as saying, "I didn't think I'd be alive this long." Of course, he's been addicted to cocaine since he was a kid, basically. He won the Cy Young in 1985 when he was 20 years old, and he was dominant. His 1985 season was amazing. 24-4 record, 1.53 ERA, led the league in strikeouts, but had 16 complete games. If a pitcher had 16 complete games, they'd put his manager in jail for overuse. But between cocaine and overuse, it was never the same. By the time he was 22, he was already downhill. He was 21 years old in 1986 when the Mets won the World Series. He was the 3rd best pitcher on that staff, behind Bobby Ojeda and Ron Darling. Gooden was pitching Game 3s of the NLCS in the World Series because the other guys were better than he was. He was already on the downhill slide by 21. It was amazing. Dwight Gooden was never the same, snorted his way out of the league, literally had to miss an entire season in 1995 because of cocaine addiction. Sports is so difficult in that your best years are so early in life. When your best season as a professional baseball player is at age 20 and it's all downhill from there, psychologically that's got to be difficult. But hey, he made $36 million in salary over his career. I just wonder how much of that was used to fund his drug addiction. Football news. Russell Wilson gave the graduation address at Wisconsin and told the tale about how his coach at North Carolina State, Tom O'Brien, told him that he would never play in the NFL and he needed to find another place to play football the next year. This coming after a year when Russell Wilson led North Carolina State to a 9-4 record and a bowl win. Of course, Russell Wilson goes on to Wisconsin the next season, leads all of college football in quarterback rating, and then we know what happened when he went to the professional ranks as a Super Bowl champion with the Seattle Seahawks. But Tom O'Brien looks like the real tool here, but let's look at it a little closer. Was he really that far off? Was Russell Wilson really that much of a difference maker? Well, the 3 years that Russell Wilson played at North Carolina State, their record, 20 wins, 18 losses, and 1 bowl game. The 2 years after Russell Wilson left, O'Brien went 15-10 with a bowl victory. So he actually did better after Russell Wilson left. And North Carolina State still fired him. Must have been his spookily accurate judge of talent skills. He certainly missed the boat on Russell Wilson. University of North Carolina did something that Kentucky did a few weeks ago at their spring football game. They had a yard sale where they sold all this old junk, old clothes, old shoes, and apparently it led to mass hysteria that people just wanted cheap swag. Hey, it's a great way for schools, athletic departments, to get rid of unwanted junk and to make a little money at the same time. I just have a problem with these collectors, using that term very loosely, going after this stuff with no regard whatsoever for anyone else. I'm sure that was a great place to be. Sheesh. Talk about the fellowship of the miserable. You had it right there. These collectors, I'm sure these kids walked up. Hey, Dad, give me one of the... Can I have some of this cheap free stuff? Can I have some of this North Carolina swag? No, I'm sorry. See that collector over there with like shopping carts full of stuff that he's going to get and sell on eBay for a 2% profit, he got it all before you. Oh, Dad. Yeah, exactly. Pathetic. I'm sure that happened in Kentucky, too. It's just sometimes I like to turn my head. Syracuse, ahead of the times, are now, in 2017, will offer a degree in sports analytics. And one of their people came out and said, the days of people making decisions that aren't data-driven are over. Absolutely right. Just one more reason why I should have gone to Syracuse. I was born in the wrong time. I would have been totally one of these data-driven people. It's just a shame I was born when I was born because I'm about 20 years too late. I would have gone to Syracuse and majored in this. But then, of course, my parents would never have let me go because I wanted to go when I was a kid and they said no. But that's another story altogether. Speaking of being born at the wrong time, people of my age, early 40s, if you're in college, late 80s, early 90s, you played a lot of Nintendo, played a lot of Sega Genesis, and the best game for any red-blooded American male in that time frame was Tecmo Bowl. And if you happen to watch Family Guy last night, we don't talk about cartoons a lot on this show, but if you watched Family Guy last night, you saw about a 2-minute skit where the guys are playing Tecmo Bowl, and one of them has Bo Jackson, and he's just running roughshod over the poor New England Patriots, who on that game was the worst team. I think that was one of the years they went 1-15, or in the early 90s. Of course, way before Tom Brady was on anybody's radar. But it was just funny, and it just hammered home. The main character of the show, Peter Griffin, refused to play unless he was the Raiders of Bo Jackson. I had a friend both here and in Atlanta when I was in college. They both literally would refuse to play the game unless they could be Bo Jackson. They were that guy. They were that guy. And then they thought they were God's gift to Tecmo Bowl because they had Bo Jackson. Or in one of my friends' case, he had to use the 49ers, who had Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. Only the best quarterback receiver combo ever. Although I can argue Steve Young was better than Joe Montana. That's for another show down the road. But I laughed hysterically at that Family Guy Tecmo Bowl clip last night. Because believe me, I have friends who literally would not play unless they could be Bo Jackson. I also had one friend who, in 1989, the Oakland A's were the best team of baseball. We also played RBI baseball on Nintendo, and he wouldn't play unless he was the Oakland A's, so he could bring out Eckersley in the 9th inning, who was unhittable on that game because he threw sidearm. Every American guy has that one friend who you love to play sports video games with, but your friend refuses to play unless he's the best team on the game, thereby giving him an advantage. We all have that friend, and we hate them for it, but nobody else is a loser enough to play Nintendo with us that much, so we have to settle. We've all been there. But still, if you can watch it on YouTube, that's a great video. Anybody who played Tecmo Bowl back in the day, that is an outstanding video, because I was in the quagmire seat many times watching my friend using Bo Jackson to run all over me, and then acting like he was God's gift to video games when he had an unfair advantage. Bo Jackson was the best player on the game. I digress. And it's time for our Mac Daddy Stogies of the night. NBA, OKC, and Golden State will start tonight. Golden State, a 7.5 pick over OKC. Usually in a spot like this, you like to take the team that's had the most rest, but both teams would have at least 3 days off going into this game. This is not a game I want to touch. I'll let this one play out and then hopefully be able to hammer OKC in game 2. But let's let the first one play out. We've got 2 baseball games tonight we really like. Boston on fire, scoring more than 10 runs in 5 of the last 7 games. That's crazy. The other 2 games, they scored 6. So they're knocking the covers off the ball. Boston 24-14 goes to Kansas City, the 2-time defending American League champion and last year's World Series champion. Kansas City only 18-19. Boston won 7 of their last 8, so they're favored. They're a minus 125 at Kansas City, who's a plus 115. Rick Porcello for the Sox, 3.11 ERA. Yordany Ventura for the Royals, 4.62. So everything points at Boston right here, right? Well, not necessarily. I've got Kansas City, who's good at home, 11-6 at home this year. The Sox have knocked the cover off the ball the last week, but all those games were in Boston, and I worry about bullpen. They played some long extra inning games over the weekend. Their closer, Craig Kimbrell, has pitched in the last 3 games. He's not going to pitch tonight under any circumstance. Give me the Royals at home. Ventura's a type of pitcher. He will pitch well against the good teams, pitches against the bad teams when he struggles usually. So give me the Royals at home, the more rested bullpen, and a team hitting the road after lighting it up at home. Usually a recipe for disaster for that team going on the road. Give me the Royals plus 115 tonight. And Texas and Oakland, Texas coming off that emotional series with Toronto. Derek Holland for the Rangers, 6.09. Sean Manaea, 11.37. Why is he pitching? For the A's tonight. Rangers 22-16, 14-12 on the road so far. They've played a lot of road games. Oakland 16-22 on the year, only 5-11 at home. Texas has won 7 of their last 10. Oakland has lost 7 of their last 10. So tell me why Oakland's a minus 120 over Texas? I don't know. Ryan Madsen got a save yesterday. That's the Oakland closer. Texas's closer, Sean Tollison, didn't even pitch yesterday. I've got a more rested bullpen with Texas. I've got the better starting pitcher. I've got the better team that's played well recently. Everything points to Texas. Give me Texas tonight, plus 110 against Oakland. And what seems to be an easy pick. But, of course, when I say that, I'm jinxing myself. But still, Royals and Rangers, your Mac Daddy Stogies of the night. And that does it for today's Monday, May 16th edition of the Bottom Line Lexington podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at BottomLineLex. Email us anytime, bottomlinelex@gmail.com. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel. That's it for now, so until next time, may the winners be yours.